episode of Rustacean Station. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Today I am with Antonio, and I forgot how to say your last name. Do you mind to tell us?
Scandurra. It's pretty hard.
Oh.
I'm Italian. Yeah.
I can never roll my R's. I used to learn Spanish in school, and I can never do the sound.
Yeah, actually, I was unable to do that as a kid, and I had to learn it myself. So it's pretty interesting.
Any tips?
I don't know. Just practice a lot.
I don't even know the method for that. I have to now you got me inspired to look on YouTube for this method.
Yeah, you can learn it. Yeah, 100%. I learned it, so you can too.
They have this similar sound in some Indonesian languages because we have Indonesian domestic helpers over here, and so I often hear the rolling. I don't even know how to do that sound.
Yeah.
So I'm always attracted to that, but I wish I could do it. But yeah, we're here to talk about Zed. I'm not sure. I mean, would I say you're a co-founder of Zed?
Yeah, I'm one of the 3 co-founders, along with Max Brunsfield and Nathan Sobo. Who are the other 2?
And the interesting part is that this is not your guys' first time working on a code editor. That's kind of how you got to here, right?
That's right. Yeah. We're actually the team behind Atom, text editor that was built by GitHub. The 3 of us worked there and we're on the same team. And, I think the story is that I think Nathan is actually the original person starting Atom. And then Max and I joined a little after him. But yeah, we all worked on it for quite a while. I think up until 2019 or sometime around that. And yeah, we became really good friends while working there. And, then stuff happened. Basically, GitHub decided that Atom was no longer something that they wanted to pursue. And especially with, Microsoft coming along. And yeah, at that point, we all went our own ways. I went to work for another startup called Ditto, doing CRDT stuff. So collaborative data structures. While, I think Max stayed a little longer at GitHub and Nathan had, did so too, and then left. But yeah, at some point, the 3 of us all had this itch of building our dream editor with everything we learned from Atom. And yeah, that's basically how Zed came about, the editor that we always wanted to build. And yeah, we decided to build it in Rust.
Wait, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the editor Atom, because I do remember kind of being a big deal, and then it just kind of fell out. But I mean, what was were you there when they had these discussions about even making Atom? Because it's definitely a big endeavor to get into.
Not really. I joined, I think it was, a couple of years after that or a year after that. But I think the story is that the founder, Chris Wanstrath, wanted to build an editor. And it just so happened that Nathan was also wanting to build an editor. And I think they met at some party, at a GitHub party, and it happened because GitHub was already working on that. I think the original version of Atom called Atomicity. Recently, I think Chris Wanstrath posted a tweet with early version of Atom, Atomicity. And the idea was to build this editor in web technology, to have maximum extensibility. Turns out that wasn't a great idea in hindsight, just because of, I don't know, extensions kind of getting in the way of the editor and potentially slowing it down, which is one problem we had with Atom, with how Atom was architected. But yeah, that's kind of the story. There was some interesting overlap between what GitHub wanted to do and what Nathan wanted to do. And, it happened. He joined the team. And after that, Max and I joined.
Now, I don't even know where the heck you would start on an editor. I guess it's just inputting text and...
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you where we started on Zed. I think, I guess it's a bit different because, we knew what we wanted to do. And so, we knew we needed, a fast rendering framework. And so we started there, okay, how do we organize just, at a framework level, how do you structure the UI? How do you render it efficiently? And so that's where we started. Not even text, really, just, rendering the UI. And there's that. And then, I guess there's, as always in software, there's several paths to attack a problem. One thing we worked on was just the data structure kind of powering the buffers, right? How to represent that efficiently, built a rope and a CRDT on top of the rope. And so, from there, like having the rendering framework and having that core data structure, you kind of like build from there. But yeah, it's a huge endeavor. No kidding. It's like, sometimes I pause and I'm like, oh my God, this is like, yeah, so much. But like, we're at a point right now where we've been using Zed to build Zed for a year at this point, and haven't used any other editor since then. So yeah, you got to start somewhere, and chip away.
I mean, I think when Adam came out, I think there was Sublime. I mean, there was kind of a couple others, but I think the landscape was still pretty open and new. Now I mean, there's still quite a few others, but they don't compare, and everybody kind of switched over to VS Code. And it wasn't like, I mean, what Sublime is like, some people like it, some people don't like it. There was TextMate. I mean, there was other choices that you could
Mm-hmm.
choose. And so Adam kind of I think it made more sense back then to build something, especially, with being GitHub and what GitHub is. You
Mm-hmm.
figure, these guys should know something about how to write, how to write code in an editor. But like, I just kind of want to go back to the start of Zed, right? Like, because is it just a passion project, or do you feel that there really is no good editor at the moment?
Yeah, for me personally, it's like different problems that I'm personally trying to solve with Zed. And I think, Max and Nathan are aligned with that is, I mean, first of all, it's just like, I want my editor to be performant, and I want it to like stay out of my way. I feel like I also used VS Code and all the other editors out there, and I just never have or had that feeling of, it being snappy and like, there when you need it, right? Starting up like as soon as possible. Like, I mean, one example of this is like before Zed, I would have when I created commits, I wouldn't use VS Code or Atom for that matter to write commit messages. Like I would just stay on the terminal just because of like how slow all of those are to start up, right? And on the other hand, you have like stuff like Sublime Text, which has really good performance, but like is a little more lacking in terms of like features, right? So that's one angle with Zed. It's like, this really performant text editor, like written in Rust, where like we use all the cores in your CPU efficiently for good reason. And, use the GPU basically like, yeah, kind of like as it can be like on a modern machine. And I mean, we also have reports of people using that on older machines and like saying it's great because like it doesn't slow down and it's fast to start up. So that's one angle. But the other thing that like we're all pretty excited about, and is the other side of the story, is that like the collaboration aspects of it. Like collaboration is something that we tried to add to Atom at some point. There was this package called Teletype that Nathan and I worked on, but it never felt like integrated with the editor because like one thing we realized is collaboration is something that you want to have early on in your product because like all the concerns revolving around code potentially not being on your machine and like, yeah, all that kind of needs to be architected and be there for day one. And so like with Zed, we're thinking, basically, yeah, from day one, the editor was collaborative, meaning the buffer, the data structure powering the buffer is a CRDT. Like, it's designed to work collaboratively and like even a peer-to-peer fashion, right? Being a CRDT. And so like with that technology, our idea is to like fill that gap in the spectrum of like collaboration. Like, one thing we do a lot in Zed is like we pair a lot. And on the one hand, you have like screen sharing, right? Where like the fidelity is kind of like you see all the pixels on screen, but like the latency is terrible. And on the other hand, you have like products like Teletype, the package that we added to Atom, or there's other extensions for VS Code. There's like Live Share and other tools where like it doesn't feel quite right. And so like with Zed, the theory is that like, having a tool that like has been built from day one with those concerns in mind is a really good idea. And yeah. not only we use Zed to build Zed, we've used it for more than a year at this point, but we also use it to collaborate with each other and use the collaboration features to, work together on code.
So I'm just kind of curious. Maybe this question is a little bit out of the flow, but every editor has this, and it seems like you also. Oh, sorry, you're still working on it. Say the Vim mode. Seems like every editor has to have a Vim mode.
Yeah, we have that. Actually, Kay, one of our engineers, she worked on NeoVide, which is like front end for NeoVim, I think. And yeah, she's been working on integrating Vim support on Zed. And so yeah, we're working on it, but yeah, as with everything else in the editor, we want to make it like that experience top notch and, really nail it.
I find it a little bit weird to be emulating another editor in your editor, but I guess people just get used to the keys.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has their habits, right? Like, and I think once again, one of the principles is for your editor to like help you get stuff done. And, I think the mode is a tool in support of that.
And it's also cool that you already have the CLI tool, because I was thinking, what is the CLI tool? Then I read a little bit more, and it's basically like everybody else has that one. Like VS Code has code where you can point it to a file in the terminal, or you can suck data in, or another great case. I don't know if everybody knows this one, but you can replace the editor for your Git commits with it. So that's awesome.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the first things, even before we had syntax highlighting, even before we had anything on Zed, as soon as we could open and save files, that's the first thing I did. I set it to be my message editor. And just because of how instant startup is, it's like immediate. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, how do you focus on being, because one thing that you keep bringing up is how instant, how fast it is. But at the same time, you need to get features done. So how do you balance between adding features that you need and also being quick?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think like it all boils down to having accumulated like a bunch of experience already building another editor, like, kind of all the falls of adding this or that feature, right? So having solved the problem before really helps kind of like, if you know what you're doing, I think you can also like create something that's like very optimized. Another principle we try to follow is have the architecture be right. So like not paint ourselves into a corner where like optimizing something would be impossible. And then like, maybe we ship that feature knowing that there's still space for optimization, but like we don't necessarily pursue it. So one example is the buffer is like super fast as it stands, but like there's plenty of room for optimization. Like we haven't even started like really optimizing it at a micro level, right? And so it's always a balance, like you say. But I think like having a really good understanding of the problem helps a lot with making those decisions that won't paint yourself into a corner where you can't optimize, which is how we felt with Atom all the time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can understand that you want these things to be quick, right? I think when I watched one of the videos presented by one of the other co-founders, he was talking about, I think something like the redraw rate on your monitor should match the redraw rate on your editor, and I think, wow, this could be quite tough to do.
Yeah, I mean,
are you doing some kind of syncing to make that happen, or is it just that it's just that fast that you don't need to worry about it?
Yeah, basically, most displays are like 60 hertz, so it means that like they update like 60 times a second. Newer displays are like 120 hertz. So like, they refresh at 120 frames per second. And so what that means is like for these newer ones, you only have like 8 milliseconds to paint your application and like render it and be responsive, right? It's even worse when like, if you get a user event in between 2 frames, like say that you get a user click and you get it like midway through 2 frames, now like you only have 4 milliseconds to like respond to that and like present that on time for the next frame. So that's why it's really important to have like a rendering engine and, the rendering engine to be like super fast to draw, but also like the rest of the application, like, the CPU part, like the composing of the scene be as fast. And so like, yeah, for the rendering side of things, like we have our own UI framework called GPUI, which is not open source, but it's like basically, yeah, like the main idea with GPUI is that we kind of describe all the primitives to render the UI in CPU land. So like imagine a list of structs saying, oh, this rectangle goes here and this button goes there and this text goes here. And so it's just like a list of those things. And then all that data gets uploaded to the GPU where like it gets rendered in parallel, right? And so that allows you to do things very fast. I mean, I think on my machine, the rendering your frame is like takes 1 millisecond. And then you have the other side of it, which is like maintaining the application state, right? And making sure that like as you edit something, you update the buffer, and like updating the buffer, needs to be fast as well. So, you need to have data structures in place to make sure that you don't have like bad time bounds, no n squared or, time bounds. So we go to great lengths to avoid that.
Now, what is like the most important thing an editor has to have as somebody who's been working on editors for some time? To you, at least, because I can tell you my feeling after yours as a user.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, to me, like one aspect which kind of encompasses more, but like I would kind of summarize it as like it needs to be out of your way. And I can explain what that means to me. Like one is like it should never like slow you down, meaning like if you're trying to do something, it shouldn't feel sluggish to use. It shouldn't like interrupt your rhythm and your pace, right? So that's one way of staying out of your way. The other one is just like be beautiful, like be minimal and like pleasant to use and visually appealing. I think that says a lot and does a lot for my productivity, at least. So yeah, I mean, and the third thing would be, again, to stay out of your way is like means like making you more productive. So like if you're working on, with a certain language like Rust, for example, which we support really well, it needs to provide all the language intelligence features that you would expect so that like it can maximize your productivity and like, yeah, help you write better code.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think what I think is most important about an editor is a little bit more exact. I mean, it's kind of building upon what you're talking about, kind of out of the way. For me, it's kind of like customization, plugins, and also language support's probably the biggest one for me because I use some languages which are not as mainstream as others. So it's good that you picked Python, TypeScript. I mean, JSON, I forgot it should even be something that has language support, but
yeah, it's pretty commodity language.
it's also, but C, C++, I mean, those are your, what you guys thought were important to have out of the gate, at least for right now. Obviously, Rust makes the most sense because without that, you wouldn't be able to use it.
Right.
That's the huge thing. I think you're working on some kind of way to add customization to it, right? And I think in the video I saw, I believe he mentioned something about how can you add like the ability to add plugins, but not have it be an issue, right? Because if somebody adds in a bad plugin, it's going to be a bad experience.
Totally. Right now, the product doesn't support that. We only have a prototype that does that. It's something that's in the pipeline and will happen some time scale. But yeah, I mean, the idea with the plugins is that one lesson that we learned is that, yeah, like a bad plugin could ruin the entire experience. Like an Atom, plugins would run on the main thread, which meant like if you installed like an optimized package, like it could literally hang the UI and like prevent you from typing even, or crash your editor sometimes, right? And so one thing that we really want to do with Zed is like use, and the prototype that we built uses WASM to do that, so that you can kind of like put that plugin code in a kind of a sandbox. And from there, you have a couple options, right? Like one is to throttle it potentially, right? Like the VM that's executing the WASM kind of like decide, okay, you've run for long enough on the main thread. Like, we gave you 500 microseconds, like you ran out of your budget. That's enough. Or, even a more simple thing that, you could do, and I guess you would do both, is just show the user, this plugin is taking X amount of millisecond to do whatever they're doing, right? And so, yeah, like to stay out of your way, like we need to provide a way of allowing you to customize your editor, but without ruining the entire experience, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about using WASM in this kind of way.
Yeah, because another thing that lets us do is like, yeah, you could, I mean, right now, like it probably makes the most sense for people to as soon as we ship that feature for people to use Rust to write those extensions. But I guess like using WASM wouldn't necessarily even mandate that, right? You could use anything that compiles to WASM to write the extension. So that gives you also that flexibility. Again, still, it's a prototype, so we haven't had in the product right now. We decided to focus on a set of languages that like are pretty popular and that we use ourselves, like Rust, and we use TypeScript for our website, and other languages that we felt like we could provide good support for, and had like a pretty reasonable audience, right?
Yeah. I was thinking about what you were talking about, and actually, the immediately came to my mind was actually, yeah, the benefit of WASM is that you could use a plethora of languages rather than saying just one. Like right now, I think VS Code is you can use JavaScript or TypeScript in HTML or something. I never tried, but I think I heard something like that to build plugins. So that's true.
Yeah. At the same time, Sandbox, right? The
Yeah.
plugin. I think that's also the really good benefit of using WASM.
Yeah, it'd be kind of nice to be able to delay running a plugin, like if it's really that bad, or somehow slide it in a scheduling system. I'm guessing that's something that you're looking at doing if you're going to go that route, right?
Yeah, that plus, other things that we were thinking of doing is also for certain things, running those plugins on a separate thread, right? Like not on the UI thread. I mean, potentially even out of process. Although, again, it's a prototype. And I guess, because, yeah, like running it on a separate thread kind of gives you that ability to maybe even give it more time to run. Like, again, on the main thread, we have a strict schedule, right? Like you can't exceed those 8 milliseconds. Pretty paramount about that.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I would love to see, how that kind of stuff works, but I'm still haven't had a chance to get into WASM some more. But yeah, it sounds interesting. Yeah, let's kind of go back to the editor, right? The language part. I mean, this is something that you guys want to open up. The sad part is it would be nice if you can somehow use the existing plugins that VS Code has, but you can't do that, I'm sure, without some serious cost. I would say cost benefit, cost efficiency, or cost letdown of running those things, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess like in order to do that, you would need to kind of like write or, understand what protocol VS Code is using to talk with the plugins, right? And kind of emulate that. But I don't know. Yeah, we haven't really thought that far into like how something like that would work. And again, like focusing on the more kind of out of the box experience of, yeah, supporting some languages really well. And, hopefully like plugin support is something that like will come with time and like people will write their languages. But yeah, we're not, again, like the WASM thing we have is the prototype at the moment. So it's on our mind definitely, and it will happen soon. But like, yeah, we don't have that fully fleshed out yet.
I'm actually kind of curious more about the collaborator part, right? Because you have people that I was just running through the features section, and it looks like you can watch people or something. You can follow
Yeah,
them. Maybe
that's
watch is
right.
too creepy, but
Yeah, it's not exactly watching, it's following. So following lets you basically, like if you click on the avatar of a person in the call, or use a shortcut to toggle the following, it'll basically like as the person moves around with their cursor and switches tabs, you'll follow them. So you'll be with them, and that comes much shorter latency than just screen sharing, because like the amount of data that you need to transfer is so much lower. Not only that, say that you and I are pairing on something and like you're driving and I want to show you like how to change a piece of code. I can just take, relinquish control, or, just stop following you, get my own cursor and type, and the two of us can type together. And then you can decide to follow me if I want to show you some other piece of code. It's really interactive, like almost like a game experience of like we go together to places and we can part ways and, join forces later. You could write a test and I could write the implementation. And then when I'm done, I could follow you and see where you're at and help with the writing of your part. And so, yeah, that's what happens inside of the editor. And then like we also have the screen sharing feature that, if I'm following you and you tab away from your editor and go elsewhere, obviously we can't synchronize the entire state of the operating system. So like we fall back to screen sharing if you're like, say, go browse some page on your browser or open some application that you're working on. we kind of show you those pixels as you tab away from Z. This really like seamless experience of, and yeah, we use it all the time. It's an incredible productivity boost compared to screen sharing or anything else that we've used in the past.
I'm kind of curious about how that works, right? Like if I was using my editor and I wanted to somehow work together with you, but I mean, I just joined, right? So I'm not following anybody. How would I follow you? Do I use like an email address? Is there a special code or what?
Yeah, there's like a contact list. So like you and I would need to be contacts on Zed. You could call me and invite me to your project, or I could call you and invite you to my project. At any point, like once we are in the call, you can share any other project and I can see it. And that's opt-in. So like you decide what to share and what to leave unshared. And yeah, at that point, like once you call me or, once I call you, you like, if you accept, you'll start following me right away. Like you'll be teleported exactly where I am at that moment in where my cursor is and which buffer I have open. So yeah, like that's the kind of how do you initiate a call. And then from there you can, like I said, part ways and like kind of everybody explores their different piece of the code base, or you can easily like dispatch a command or click on the avatar of the person you want to follow right back where that person.
But how do I find this person? Is there like a name that's registered with Zed that I mean, that's the part I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's basically just a contact list. So whenever you sign up on Zed, like a user will be created. And, from that point, like from Zed, you can add users to your contacts. And if they accept your invitation, and from that point, you become contact of each other and you can call each other at any point in time.
I see. Okay. So there's some kind of central servers, kind of sync up and all that. Now, I don't know how much you can talk about, but now I'm kind of curious about the technology that powers all this stuff with the screen sharing. Is this open or is this something proprietary?
Yeah, so the screen sharing part is provided by this SDK called LiveKit, and basically a third-party service that we use to provide that bit because they take care of a lot of the heavy lifting of streaming, compressing, and all that, which is something that didn't feel like we wanted to necessarily innovate on at the moment. The rest, like the CRDT stuff, how the messaging works and how clients communicate with each other is proprietary. So like there's a server that we wrote that handles all the brokering of the connections and like the messaging. Actually, like right now, when you and I are on a call, things will be routed through the server. So like it's kind of a star topology in that sense. Like we all talk to the server, and this was done to avoid problems with peer-to-peer, where like if you have like NAT traversal problems or you're behind a proxy, that kind of starts to get pretty hard. And so yeah, having a server just simplifies things a lot for the end user. So yeah, like in short, yeah, we have a server that powers like the Z stuff, and then like we use LiveKit to share the screen basically.
Okay. This is all looking pretty cool, and it's got like a closed beta, right?
Yeah. Right now we're in closed beta, but we're actually working on releasing a public beta pretty soon. So yeah, stay tuned for that because yeah, it's happening.
Oh, actually, sorry, I did want to ask one more question about the collaborators, right? I mean, how worried should I be about people doing things that I don't want them to do, right? So obviously, if I should be using Git or some type of service control so I don't lose everything at least, that's something that can happen. But I'm more so about like, could they run sudo? Could they do things that are destructive to my machine?
No, right now, like everything, when you're in a call with someone, they can only see files related to the project that you shared. So like nothing above that directory or file. And they can't run commands. The moment like Z embeds a terminal, but like that part is not collaborative yet. We're working on that, and support for that will come out soon. But even when you'll have terminal access, it's gonna be such that like a malicious user can't perform weird actions on your computer unless one thing we're thinking is there could be some social contract, right? Like you could maybe allow them in an opt-in way to like do whatever they want at some point, but like revoke access when you need to if you're working on with somebody that you trust. But yeah, as it stands today, like the only things that they can do is change files via Z, for directories that you've shared.
Okay. For the language support, server support, I literally just did an episode recording with Rust Analyzer. Are you using Rust
Oh,
Analyzer or
nice.
you have something custom?
We are. Yeah, we are using Rust Analyzer. That's actually the first language server we integrated with and what drove most of the implementation of the language server protocol. And yeah, we use that all the time and are grateful for the great work that the team did there. So yeah, we're using Rust Analyzer, and our principle is for every language to use like the best language server or the official language server for that language. So for Go, we use something called Go Please, I think. And, basically use the best language server for that language. In the case of Rust, we think it's Rust Analyzer.
Now, I think you're also using Alacrity, right?
Not really. Like, I think for the terminal, the embedded terminal, we used parts of it, but like we actually ended up writing, because, we have our own rendering engine. And so we didn't want to use Alacrity's rendering engine. So from Alacrity, I think we're just using just part of it of like just the ANSI parsing code. But yeah, nothing else. So it's just like, the rendering we handle ourselves, and we let them, the Alacrity, part of Alacrity, just do the parsing of the terminal buffer.
Please tell me you have a feature that Alacrity doesn't have that everybody else wants it to have, tab support. Do you have tab support for your terminal?
Tab support? I actually don't know. Tab support.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. One of our engineers, Michaela, worked on it. So not entirely sure, but yeah, I'll let you know as soon as I check that out.
Yeah, because that's huge. I mean, obviously you can use tmux, or I forgot what Alacrity said. I think you can wrap Alacrity with something and then somehow you can emulate having multiple tabs or something like that. But like, there's so many people who are like begging Alacrity for tab support. Like, I wanted to use Alacrity, but I need tabs.
Oh, you meaning having multiple terminal tabs?
Exactly, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, we do support that.
Okay.
Sorry. I didn't realize that's
yeah,
what
maybe
you
I
were
wasn't
asking.
clear
Yeah.
in what I was saying, but yeah, that's
sorry.
huge.
I thought you meant like hitting tab and that did something magical.
Oh, no. I mean tab support, like having multiple.
Yeah. You can have as many tabs as you want, and they're all super fast, and you can switch between them.
Thank God.
In the blink of an eye. Yeah.
I have no idea how I can't use a terminal without tabs. I don't know how people used to do it back in the day.
We definitely support that 100%.
And of course, you have dark mode out of the box. You have to have that.
Yeah, we got a bunch of themes.
And light.
And light. Yeah, we got a bunch of themes. We're looking to refine the list to like just provide a curated set of themes. We experimented with some, but yeah, we have a theme system that kind of like in the future we will open up for people to also customize their themes. But yeah, out of the box, we support both a bunch of light themes and a bunch of dark themes.
Now, can you talk about how the themes work? I mean, I guess you can talk about that because you want to kind of open that up to people to make their own. That's not CSS or something. I'm just curious how that would work.
No, yeah, there's basically like types. Right now, it's like we have a TypeScript file that kind of like, because themes are really dynamic, right? And so you want to also use like all kinds of composition functions, like, like change the saturation of a color. And we really wanted to lean on the NPM ecosystem to do that. So basically like this TypeScript file that defines like a schema for the theme, and then like you can use functions and, TypeScript literally to kind of fill this schema with the theme that you want. And the theme just generates, there's like a bunch of things that the theme support, like, the color, the background color of buttons, right? And you can sort of specify that. And we're working actually to like redesign the theme system to be even more dynamic and coherent. But yeah, like basically once the schema is generated on the TypeScript side, like the Rust side that's generated just once, right? And that generates a JSON file. And then Rust just reads it and, fills us, deserializes it with Serde. And the rest of the application can read the theme and just render a button with particular color and background and style and so on.
I'm kind of curious, right? If you could pick maybe 3 to 5 crates that you think are really key to Zed doing what it's doing, right?
Oh,
that's
interesting.
That's a great question. And not just, of course, name them, but also name why.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Serde is just invaluable. It's just an amazing crate to read configuration, and it's just amazing. Another crate that we're using is what enables the RPC stuff to work, which is basically like, yeah, what generates out of we use protobuf to encode messages over the wire. And so we use, I forget which crate exactly. Yeah, I don't remember the name, but like to like encode the proto, generate structs from the proto and serialize those messages. I think it's like Prost, probably. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I mean, 3 to 5. Let me think about the third one.
You're probably using Tokyo, right, for async?
Oh, yeah. For the server, we're using Tokyo. We're actually not using Tokyo for the application because like we have our own executor actually that we lean on small, which is like an executor, a really like small executor that lets us integrate with the Cocoa event loop. So like the macOS UI event loop. So on the client, we're not using that. But yeah, on the server, definitely using, Tokyo. How could I forget that?
Yeah. Now you got me curious when you mentioned Cocoa, right? That's very, very obviously Mac specific, right? So this editor, because I mean, is it that this editor only works with Mac OS at this current time, or is there multiple platforms?
Yeah, at the moment it just works with Mac OS, but we definitely want to add support for other platforms, Linux and Windows, obviously. And it's already structured such that, we literally have like platform directory in UI framework that's like right now it just only has a macOS subfolder, but the code is already structured with seams and like traits such that we can implement a new platform really easily. The only bits that we need to port are like our shader code because right now that's written against Metal. But again, like the way that we try to build it was like with multi-platform support in mind. So the shaders don't use anything specific to Metal. Any Metal specific API, they can be easily ported to OpenGL or Vulkan or other backends.
Okay, yeah, that's it's good to hear that that's on the support. And as a Mac OS user, I don't really care if there's support for Linux or Windows, personally.
Like I said, you have to start somewhere, right? And
Yeah.
so we all were Mac users, and so we started there. But we definitely think that a commodity tool such as a code editor should have multi-platform support, and we will be shipping that.
So you can't say you have Unix support then, right? Because macOS is basically Unix underneath.
That's right. Actually, yeah. I mean, porting to Linux, given how the APIs. I mean, some of the APIs are not that similar, but like some of them are. So yeah, porting to Linux, I don't think it's going to be that big of a task. Yeah, especially given how we structured the code already.
Yeah, for some reason, I just feel in my feeling that porting Rust is easier than porting like C or C++ for other platforms.
I think like the application is divided in, I mean, it's a lot of different crates, but like it depends on this UI framework like, that we call GPUI. And everything above GPUI is pretty platform agnostic. Like we should be able to let Rust take care of the compilation to other targets, right? Yeah, so the only bit that we would need to like port is the rendering code because that uses like specific platform APIs. So yeah, like I think that's another reason why we picked Rust because like it gives us the speed of systems language, but lets us compile to whatever target we want, which is pretty awesome.
No, I'm kind of curious, right? I know a little bit. Maybe I might sound like a fool if you know what you're talking about, since I don't know exactly what I'm talking about. Are you, for macOS, are you just directly working with Metal? Right? That's the rendering? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We basically have this render struct that like creates a Metal encoder and, creates all the various pipelines, right? Like the vertex. We compile the shaders into like a Metal library, and then the renderer kind of loads that library and retrieves the vertex and fragment shaders, and then like invokes them via coder. They call it render encoder. So yeah, it's literally just Objective-C calls, kind of.
Yeah. So if you were to do this for Linux, I think you'd have to use Vulkan. Is that right?
Probably. I'm actually not an expert, but like, yeah, we could use Vulkan. I think another option that like we are considering is using something like WGPU, something that like already abstracts away those details and lets you write kind of the shaders once. So yeah, but again, like we use pretty like commodity primitives, right? Like Vertex and fragment shaders are like as old as the GPUs. So yeah, that shouldn't be a problem.
Now I'm kind of curious if you guys would be looking at hiring some video game designers because this is exactly what they do. Make it fast, make it performant, make it look good, and
Yeah.
abuse the heck out of the platform, right?
Yeah, I mean, we drew a lot of inspiration from video games. I mean, yeah, like some of those techniques are what enable Zed to render on 120 frames per second monitors. So, yeah, I mean, that's not out of the question for sure.
Yeah, because that's exactly what, like, once you said metal, and then I'm thinking about Vulkan. Like, I got myself a Steam Deck, and I've been playing that like crazy. And I know people are talking about Vulkan, and I'm like, wait a minute, I heard about Vulkan with Rust, and I heard good stuff about it, and now I start to understand a little bit more what's going on. I don't know, when you play video games and you really like start reading stuff, you start to like the video game players start to know quite a bit about how video games are made, and like they start criticizing, like, oh, these shaders are really low quality. And I'm like, really? It seems pretty okay on my screen, but maybe I don't have a good enough screen. Funny. Now I start to really get into it. It's like, okay, actually, I had a couple of people on here talking about video games, so I kind of know what Vulkan is. I know what some of the stuff is now. I understand what's going on. Yeah, we're kind of running near the end of our time. What's really cool is you guys have got a really awesome editor, I think, that's coming out. You have really cool features. The collaboration is definitely key. All these kind of things are really looking cool. I mean, is there something that we didn't brush over that you think should be mentioned that people should really know about Zed before we start to end?
Yeah, I think we went pretty much into detail. I mean, one thing that we maybe didn't say is that, and I think it's valid, is that it's really beautiful. I think it's really pleasant to use, and like, which I did touch a little bit on that, but our designer Nate did a great job, I think, with the UI, because I think it looks really good.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is looking pretty cool. I mean, I guess I have just kind of like two final questions, right? Or maybe kind of more like three. Let me start off with the first one. Is this going to be like is there going to be like a tiered kind of system? Because obviously you have to, I mean, this is somewhat of a business, right? So you have to somehow keep the lights on. I mean, how is that going to be reflected towards end users in the end?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, that's like an open conversation, right? But like the thinking right now is that like we really want to open up the editor to as many people as possible. So like that's what's going to happen with the public beta. And, you know, we want to give it in the hands of people because it's a good editor and we want as many people as possible using it. There could be a world where like the collaboration side of things could be monetized, like, you know, for private teams, or, you know, maybe like free for open source and paid for teams. I don't know. It's still like an open question. Like we're still in the phase of like, you know, building a really good product, and collaboration could be one angle that we've thought about.
Okay, interesting. Then I think the next question was, you did mention something about some things being closed source, right? So does it mean that parts of this editor will be actually be open sourced?
We are thinking about that. I mean, again, it's kind of an open conversation, and, you know, there's obviously pros and cons, but like I could see a world where we do open source parts of the editor. I mean, one thing I would really love to do is open source a GPUI, because I think other people's could benefit from it. And, you know, other parts of the editor too. That's not something we made a final decision on yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those are the biggest questions I had. And there was another one also related to kind of how this would work. Yeah, I think those are, in general, those are kind of my questions, right? So yeah, I'm looking forward to this coming out. I mean, I would love to check it out. I mean, sadly, I don't get to do Rust full time every day, but it makes me want to try it out. Now I'm kind of curious how that would feel like. So
awesome. Yeah. Right now there's like private alpha, so you can sign up and we're letting people in. But depending on when this goes out, I don't know, chances are that public beta might be there. So yeah, I recommend checking out zed.dev website and what the status of it is and download it if it's there.
Okay. Sounds good. I can't wait for this thing to come out. I want to. You keep hyping up about how fast it is, so I'm gonna be like have my eyes open. I'm hopped up on Mountain Dew and caffeine, and just focusing to see if I can see a flicker.
Oh yeah, it's really good. It's really good. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, I hope that with all your experience and all the time you guys spent, it's like over a year, right? And just in development.
More than that, yeah. I think we started in April 2021. So yeah, more than a year.
Awesome. And with that, then yeah, it's great for you to have you on the show. And I would love to, yeah, I can't wait to see this come out, and would love to see success for this editor.
Thanks.
Because I wanted to destroy my VS Code editor. The problem with VS Code is that they have so many extensions, and they support nearly all languages. So I have to use it sometimes. So that's my issue. If I can kill it, that'd be nice.
Well, yeah, it was a pleasure being on the show, and yeah, thanks so much for having me.